Aloha. I'm Dr. Sasha Lessin. I'm here with my wife and partner, Janet Kira Lessin. That's her waving there. And we're going to do the second part of our series called Amend the Malevolent Matrix, our Anunnaki makers mentored. In this lesson, we're going to deal with how we got some modeling for military dictator kings. There's some here these days. Nukes in space. There's some here these days. Rape, incest, and war, of which there's some these days. So let's see the first slide. We want to start with the idea that what was going on in the planet that our makers came from, Nibiru, gave us scripts or sort of things that we follow. It's built into our genes, and it's also modeled, and it's also trained by very severe means, like killing us if we didn't obey. Let's see the next slide. On the planet Nibiru, they had a nuclear war, North versus South, almost wiped out everybody, made most of the men who survived sterile, and there was a huge imbalance, way more females than males. Next slide. And the commanders just nuked the heck out of each other, and they wore these kind of helmets, and they radiated their enemies, and they radiated themselves. And you'll see that's a pattern they'll repeat once they get to Earth. Next. And there's a artist's conception of them letting go with nuclear bombs. We'll see it again in Sodom and Gomorrah and Sinai in later episodes. Next. And what they did to finally end this thing, which was there wouldn't be anybody left, was they had a drawing between North and South, and the winner was going to be the king, and the loser was going to supply the queen. And that would be a royalty that encompassed the whole planet. Next slide. Well, the guy that won was from the North. His name was An, A-N. He won. They did a lottery, a drawing of some kind. And the way An ruled, he ruled like Mr. Putin, by degree, and he appointed governors who did what he said. But it was one government for the whole planet, and the way they saw to do it was military guys with bombs, and they kept the order, period. Next. The number two in the kingdom, he was called the Cupbearer. He rebelled. The king who had killed his predecessor, that was what they were into, for not addressing climate change. The king, his name was Alalu, who killed the other guy. He wasn't successful either. He sent a rocket ship to get gold, which they were going to float up into the atmosphere as a shield for the planet, because they had a hole in their ionosphere from all the nuking. But the rocket ship hit a asteroid, and everybody was killed. All 50 astronauts were killed. And he also tried nuking the volcanoes, because before the volcanoes had given plenty of ash, which protected the planet's atmosphere, but they stopped functioning. And so they tried nuking the volcanoes, but that didn't work either. And so after a while, he gave up and just ruled. And that's when his number two, Anu, rebelled, and they had a big fight naked in front of everybody. And Anu won. His followers took him back to the palace to crown him. And Alalu, the loser, snuck off because he remembered he killed his predecessor. He expected the same. He stole one of the nuke-armed rocket ships that was left from the war, and he blasted off for Earth, where he knew there was gold. And he actually used his rockets. He had a lot of them, but he used them all up except 9, blasting asteroids on the way to the Earth. But there was still 9 missiles left. Next. Well, after a while, the chief scientist of the Anunnaki and his personal pilot got into the rocket ship that Alalu had landed at Basra in the Persian Gulf, and they got the missiles and they snuck them away and they hid them in a cave in Africa. Next. The only people that knew about where the nukes were was Enki, the chief scientist, and his personal pilot, Abgal. Next. And when Anzu, who had driven Enki's craft, his rocket ship, to Earth, saw that his former boss, Alalu's nukes were gone, and then he knew there were 9 of them in the rocket, he said, "What did you do with the missiles? They're supposed to be in the ship." And Enki said, "You're fired." And instead of sending Anzu back with the gold samples, Enki sent his personal pilot, Abgal, back with the gold samples. Next. Next slide, please.
Thank you. Okay.
And so Enki wasn't going to take a chance of Anzu messing him up, and so he fired Anzu on the spot. As another example of what the Anunnaki showed us is the commander of the whole expedition, Enlil, in later days he was known as Yahweh, raped the chief medical officer's Nimma's number 2. Her name was Sud at this point. She said, no, I don't want to do it. You're a giant. I'm just a little person, and I'm a virgin too. Please don't. And he just raped her. And everybody was so enraged on Earth. Her boss, Nimma, head of the chief medical officer, and the Anunnaki Council exiled Enlil to Africa. Next. Well, she got pregnant by that rape, and as her belly grew, everybody talked her into, "Hey, let the boss come back. You know, if he marries you, will you do it?" And she said, "Well, if he promises to be monogamous and gives me the title Ninlil, which will make me a 50, he's a 60. They'll make me a 50, make me number 2 in status here. I'll marry him, but he's got to be monogamous." So next slide. So Enki, in the meantime, got together with Nimma, the chief medical officer. And as an example of a model that they gave us, he wanted to make a son with her. So that would start a lineage on Earth that he hoped would control the Earth at some point. But he just kept having girls at first. The first girl, Ninsa, he didn't do anything with her. But his second daughter, Nikura, he made a baby with her, and that was a child whose name was Utu. And when she grew up, he incested her too, but she aborted the baby and did a ritual to get over it, and she became quite an important person in the sequence. But here we go. The Anunnaki have showed us rape, and they've showed us a lot of war so far. Let's see the next slide. So Alalu, when he lost, and then he fought again with Anu, Anu banished him to Mars to die there, just going to die on Mars. And Anzu, who had driven the plane, the rocket that took Enki to Earth, said, "Look, I want to go with, even if I die too, with Alalu. He's my kinsman, and I care for him until he dies. And if I die there too, that's the way it goes." Well, Anu was impressed. He had been wounded by Alalu, by an illegitimate fight that Alalu had bitten off his manhood during it. And so he said, okay, Anzu, look, if you're alive, I'm going to send my daughter back because she's going to bring some medical officers, female medical officers to Earth. If you're still alive, I'll leave you some men, and I want to start a transshipment base for the gold. We're going to send it in bar form to Mars and then transship it because it's lots easier to get off Mars. Don't use as much fuel, more thin atmosphere. So we need that transshipment base on Mars, and you can head it, Anzu, if you're still alive. So to take care of yourself while you're taking care of the dying Alalu. Next slide, please. Well, by and by, Anzu had a lot of guys up there working for him, and they wanted more beer, and they wanted some women too. The women were all on Earth, and sure, they went during the shuttle. They got to see some girls, but they wanted to be on Earth too. Does that ring a bell? It certainly rings my phone's bell. Anyway, the commander, Enlil, certainly didn't want Abgal to come down and do any Anzu, I mean, to come down and in his place, but everybody prevailed on him. Look, we got to cooperate with the guys working Mars base. So Anzu is going to come, Enlil, and you've got to show him the computer room and let him understand what you've got to go through and why it is you're not giving those guys more beer and not getting women for them. Next slide. Well, Anzu stole Enlil's computer key. His men landed. They took over from Mars base. They took over the whole Earth, and they said, "We got it now." Next. Well, Enki told, who had built the rockets in the first place, told his nephew Ninurta, "Look, I know all about what the craft that Anzu is flying, and here's how you can wipe it out." Next. And so Ninurta, this is an ancient depiction of it, fought Anzu, and there's a picture of Anzu's craft. What Ninurta has there is a MIRV, a multi-headed missile, and he's on his famous plane that Enki designed for him. That's the thing underneath him. It's depicted that way. And so he shot Anzu down and dragged him before the council. Next slide. There he is, dragging. There's Ninurta. He's dragging Anzu before Enlil. Next. And they said, kill him. And so Ninurta executes Anzu. Notice we still have capital punishment. Next. But Enlil was really pleased with Ninurta, who's also his son, by the way, and heir. And he gave him this super duper missile, and he's got this plane. He is the master of the whole ball of wax. Everything the Anunnaki did. He can fly anywhere quick. He can bomb people. He can wipe them out. Next. Well, that's it for today. We will see what happens next with these maliciously motivated people that have taught us how to be and showed us how to be and made sure that we were pitted against each other. You'll learn more about it next time. Thanks for listening to this one. Do you want to say anything, Janet? You watched all this.
I just want to say thank you for listening. Much love and blessings. Aloha.
Goodbye, ha.